Let's look at another example. In this question, you need to request the user to input 5 numbers. So we need to get input 5 numbers, and they tell us to make use of a loop. Find and output the sum of the 5 numbers. Well, if I don't use a loop, then I could have a variable called num1, and I could use the input statement and convert that to an integer and use the input statement and say enter number 1. And similarly, I could get another number, num2, in the same way. And then I could get num3, I could get num4, and finally I could get num5. That will give me 5 numbers, which is what the question wants me to achieve, to input 5 numbers, but I'm not using a loop. So, and then it wants me to find the sum of the numbers. Well, if I did this, then the sum is simply equal to num1 plus num2 plus num3. But how would I do this using a loop? So because I need 5 numbers, I want the loop to run 5 times. So I'm going to say for x in range, and I want to go 1, 6. So 1, 6 is going to stop at 5. So from 1 up to 5, that will give me, that will ensure that the loop executes 5 times. Now let's input a number. So I'm going to input a number. I'm going to say num equals, we'll do our usual conversion. We'll use the input statement and we will say enter number. So this gets a single number. But if it is inside of the loop, and if it's repeated 5 times, it means I'm going to get 5 numbers. But the problem is that when I get a variable, just remember that a variable can only hold a single number. So when I get the first number, let's assume that it is 10, and then I go and get the second number, 20, remember that the 10 is lost. When I get the third number, maybe 5, the previous number is lost. So by putting this statement and getting 5 numbers, that helps me to solve the first part of the question where I need to input 5 numbers, but I'm losing the numbers each time. So how do I find the sum of the 5 numbers? Because that's what the question wants, find the sum. So the minute you get the number, you need to accumulate the number. So there's my accumulator. So I accumulate the number. And remember, whenever you have an accumulator, you need to initialize it to 0. So I set it to 0. When x, the first value of x is 1, I get a number that is input. Let's assume the number is 10. I then accumulate. The first time sum is 0, 0 plus 10. So 0 plus 10, sum will have the value 10. It goes back up and x now becomes 2. You're going to input a second number. So this time, let's assume I input 5. Sum is currently 10 plus 5 is 15. So sum now has the value 15. I go back up. X is now, it was 1, 2, now it is 3. I input another number. Let's assume it's 20. Sum equals sum, which is currently 15. 15 plus 20 will give me a total of 35. So you can see how the values are accumulating. So now I need to print. So I'm going to say print the sum is, and I'm going to convert to a string the variable sum. So this is how you would go about writing a program like this, where you need to input 5 numbers and find the sum of the 5 numbers. So let's try and see how to use this now in the Delphi, let's try and see how this will work in the Python environment. I'm going to call up online GDB. I just want to quickly, well, I need to select my language, and I need to, let's position my cursor there. I want to input 5 numbers. So we said we want to start up a for loop. So for x in range, and we want it to run 5 times. So that's 1 comma 6 will run 5 times. I want to input my number. So num equals, let's convert this input enter a number. I'm just going to put this entire thing in a bracket. So that's going to be converted into an integer. And then I'm going to accumulate it. Sum equals sum plus the number. Sum plus num. And because it's an accumulator, I need to set my sum to 0. Sum has now been set to 0. And then outside of the loop, so I backspace, I'm now outside of the loop. I'm going to print and say the sum is, and then convert and print the sum. So let me leave a line so you can see things better. Here I've got my sum that is set to 0. Sum is set to 0 because of my accumulator. This is my for loop that's going to run 5 times from 1 to 5. I get the number and I accumulate the number, and that happens 5 times. When that for loop finishes, it then comes out and it prints the sum. Let's give this a run to see if there are any errors. There are no errors. So it's running, it's saying enter a number. I'm going to enter 10. Well, you'll notice that I should have left a space after the R in number. That was careless of me. Enter another number. You can see it's running the second time round. So I'm going to enter 20. It's running the third time round. It's asking me to enter a number. I'm going to enter 5. The fourth time round, it's asking me to enter a number. I'm going to enter 1. And now it's asking me the 5th time, and this should be the last time. So far 20 plus 10 is 30, 35, 36, 36 and 4. Let me enter 4. Not 44, just 4. And you will see that it prints the sum is 40. So this is how you go about answering a question where you need to, don't look too much into request. Request means allow the user to input 5 numbers, right? So don't look deeply into that. The question is just wanting you to input 5 numbers using a loop and then to find the sum of those 5 numbers.